Hey, it's good to have you with us again. I'm Mark.
And I'm Sarah, and we're the Business Ballers. We're excited to be coming to you today with a new format. We've been receiving a ton of great feedback and questions from you, our audience. And Mark and I talked about it, and we really want to be able to respond to those more frequently and with more content. And that's our plan going forward. To start that off, today we're covering a really important topic that has been evolving, which is the surge of female entrepreneurs. And for me, being a female entrepreneur and having worked with a lot of them, this is one we thought that would really, create some opportunity for a lot of our audience and looking at their path going forward too.
Exactly. So we titled this one She Means Business. And so this is all about the future of business is female. Today we're going to have a look at the overall landscape as it exists for female entrepreneurs, what's working for them, and where we think changes need to be made. So we're going to explore it pretty deeply. But Sarah, I think maybe a good place to put the boat in the water, if you will, is to start with just some statistics.
Yeah, no, there's some really compelling numbers that have come out recently. One of the biggest for me anyway is the fact that women own 12 million businesses in the US right now, and they employ, I think the number is 10.7 million workers as well. And what that boils down to, it's 40% of businesses that are US owned.
Which is actually for me honestly pretty surprising because as I was coming up in the 80s and 80s, I didn't run into as many female entrepreneurs. So this number is actually shocking, like how quickly it grew, because I just never really saw too many women as entrepreneurs back then.
Yeah, no, it's true. I mean, my experience was slightly different. As I said, that more recently, I've actually worked with a lot of female entrepreneurs that I would say have been part of this sea wave. But definitely, it's been a big change from looking back from, I'd say, when we were both started in the workforce.
Yeah, definitely, which is good. It's good to see. That's for sure.
Yeah. And I
Right. And
think
so,
the
yep.
other thing too, just if you look at all those businesses now that are women owned, the thing that is really striking is that they're contributing 2.5 trillion to the US economy, which is huge.
It's shocking. Yeah. I mean, this is what I'm talking about. It's moved so much. We're talking in a few moments, but we're seeing too, there's quite a few number of unicorns, billion-dollar businesses that are popping up that are founded by women.
Yeah, and like you're saying too, there's no slowdown either. So even though there's been this surge, like the latest estimates out are also saying that these businesses are expected to grow 40% and women with businesses continuing to really be a significant part of the growth in the economy.
So another thing that's nice to see is that over 60% of the new businesses that are started are actually also started by women of color.
Yeah, no, that's a really terrific trend within this also. And then if we put that all together, looking at one of the challenges with all this though is that even though there's all this great momentum with these female-owned businesses, they're only receiving 5% of the funding to actually get them going.
Yeah, that was actually really shocking to me, and we're going to talk about that a little bit more deeply later, but that's a trend that really needs to change because women are outperforming men as mentioned earlier. So we really need to see more money flowing, more capital flowing to women in business. That's for sure.
Yeah. I think within this too, there have definitely been a few women who you would call unicorns that have really surfaced and I'd say blazed the trail to show what's possible, going from starting from scratch and what you can build into.
If the audience isn't familiar with that term, a unicorn is a company that receives $1 billion or more valuation. When we did a quick little bit of research here just to be able to talk about some of those, but they're extensive and some very big valuations too, like Canva.
Yeah.
So, yeah,
Canva's a good one to talk about, a tool that people are using every single day now. I mean, I know I do for our business, and I had no idea how huge it was. And then when you dive into, Melanie behind it, like what she did to actually build it is really, really incredible.
Yeah, it's impressive, and that one, that's a big number. I mean, it's a really big number at 25 billion. Bumble is another one that was founded by
Yep.
Whitney Hurd, right? Whitney Hurd. So Bumble was another one which a lot of people here that might be watching us might have used. It's a dating app. Again, took that public and had a valuation of over 1 billion at one point. So again, a tool that a lot of people have used and for their dating. So that's another one.
Yeah, no, that one's interesting because that's really where it started. And then she was able to expand that into beyond just dating. And then that's what really made it take off and I think build the value around that one as well.
Did you ever use Bumble?
I haven't. Have you?
I did use Bumble, yes. When I got divorced, I was using Bumble.
Well, the thing about Bumble is the women make the choices. So that goes with the bigger theme of what we're talking about here, which is good.
Exactly. So, all right. And then moving on, we've got Newbank, Guild Education, just naming a couple more here. Chief, which you know about Chief, right? I wasn't familiar with Chief.
Yeah, Chief's an interesting one, and I was actually surprised when it came up on this list. It's essentially a women's networking group that you get invited to and pay to join. And I
Mhm.
literally had no idea that it had such a big following and membership and grew such a huge valuation on it.
Yeah, I hadn't heard of it.
Yeah, and it's interesting also because if you look at even just those examples, which are the top handful that say of those unicorns, look at the breadth of the different kinds of businesses they are. I think that's just something to stop and notice, especially for our audience, that these ideas can come from anywhere from banking to dating to creative tools to Oprah's media empire.
Yeah.
It's really these women who had an idea and started with something and were able to grow it and build a community behind it and make it really huge.
Yeah, and we've talked about some other women entrepreneurs in the other segments too. Sarah Blakely, for example, that would be another example of a unicorn. Definitely, it's a diverse range of business types that we're seeing, and it's a huge opportunity, I think, because we're seeing it's more and more impactful. I think the issue is more money flowing to women. We have to talk about that a little bit later here. So
Yeah,
just to,
and
do- oh,
just one other thing to touch on that too. If I look at those women also, if you think about, I mean, they're huge today and most of them are household names, but a few of them too started from nothing. So, as we talk about funding and making funding available, I just think it's important to call out here that these women figured it out. Like look at Oprah, look, you
yeah.
mentioned Sarah Blakely, like she's very open about her story where she started, didn't have a lot of background or business, but were able to, hustle and get their idea together and build it into something huge.
Sarah, why don't we shift gears and talk about our experiences? Now, I already kind of indicated I do have one experience early in my life, really, with a female entrepreneur that I want to talk about.
Yeah, for me, as I've talked about in some of our other podcasts, I started out working for companies that were dominated by white men in the boardroom, white men as my bosses. I
Yeah,
mean, even when I was working for other companies, whether they were public or large corporations, that was who my boss was and everything else.
yeah.
That really shifted, I'd say, like, midway through my career. When I started working for companies, it was interesting that were actually female founded. So, the first one was Dry Bar. The story of Allie Webb, how she really built that from a single really genius idea, getting to work close with her and see how that business could take off. And then all the way through working for Jenny Craig, which Jenny herself, obviously, by when I was there, she wasn't in the business. She was much, much older, but she was actually one of, I would say, if not the first really big female entrepreneurs in the US, 30 years ago. Her story was unheard of, and she's written about it and how she cracked through these, what I'm talking about, of all these companies and used weight loss that were dominated also by white men and built something specifically for women. I love looking back at those early days of those people who really were the true groundbreakers and innovators, and like a Jenny, and how they paved the path, even though, to your point, the path didn't really blow up until recently for some of these other women like Allie and people I've been fortunate enough to work for.
The very first exposure I had to a woman who was an entrepreneur was actually my mentor's wife. My mentor, a guy by the name of Marty Statler, they owned a golf course, a little par three golf course and a driving range. And, Marty was a bit of the face of the business, and his wife, Pat, she ran the whole operation. I mean, I'm pretty sure without her, it would have been a massive flop. But because I think he was very social and kept people around. He gave golf lessons. He was a pro, but she operated the business. And so she was very regimented woman, really on top of things. And they had a great business. I mean, look, it was not something that they scaled into 50 golf courses or something, but they had a great business that afforded them an opportunity to hang out in Florida in the winters, retire early. It was a really good outcome for them. And so that was really the exposure that I had. But that having been said, I have to say that a lot of the really, really good operators and executives that I have worked with over the years are women.
Yeah, no, very different experience, but what you're saying there really resonates with me too. Not only being biased as a female entrepreneur, but working with others as well as. And I think like those are some of the important things we should talk about too. Like why do some of these traits you just called out actually make women stronger entrepreneurs? I mean, you just spoke about a couple big ones, being organized, more regimented, better planners. I think that 100% rings true just in kind of the DNA of how women work and the busyness, especially in their lives and needing to be more that way, work or at home or anywhere really.
And Sarah, maybe before we even get into the traits, we should like walk people through some of these studies that have been done recently because what we're seeing is that women are better entrepreneurs than men.
Yeah, let's take a look at a few of these studies. It's really interesting when you get into the numbers here. The first one is a big one that Boston Consulting Group did. It was called the Mass Challenge Study. It was back in 2018, I believe. They analyzed 350 startups, and what they found was the women led startups generated more revenue with less capital, hands down. And specifically on the numbers there, the women founded companies generated 78 cents of revenue per dollar of funding, while the male founded companies generated only 31 cents per dollar. So that really boils down to you can do the math. Women produce 2.5 times more revenue per dollar invested.
That's the one that I always hear being referenced, but there are actually more. We dug up some more for the listeners. So another one was the first round capital study. They analyzed 300 companies and their portfolio and found that female founded companies outperformed male founded companies by 63%.
Yeah, really supporting some of those initial numbers. You can't refute the data and then having that additional survey data to back it up.
Yeah, and I think it's also, I mean, it's one where they're looking at portfolio companies too, so it's not like a biased survey. I mean, it's like just
Right.
straightforward performance, apples versus apples.
Yeah, another big consulting group, McKinsey, they've looked at it too. They found in their diversity wins report that companies with more women in leadership also financially outperform their peers with 25% higher profitability. They also, interesting, said that 61% also had higher innovation and agility scores, pointing to those traits we'll talk about in a bit, and then
Yep.
40% higher sustained value creation as well.
Right, and there's more. So Kauffman Foundation study, women are also, as you just pointed out there, they're more efficient operators. They had better long-term planning in this study, better capital efficiency, which is really notable. We see that like It's also true with women in investing. So women, once they consistently begin to invest, they outperform men. It's a trait that we don't just see in business, but also in life management skills as well, dealing with finances. They start companies with less funding and lower burn rates. Again, really good use of capital. And they also have higher survival rates over 10-year timeframes, which is
Wow.
interesting too, because with respect to investing, women also tend not to panic in down markets and take losses and take major lumps. Instead, kind of ride it out better than men tend to.
Wow, that is just like completely shocking and really good to hear. The last study here we have no set of studies would be complete without something from Harvard and MIT, of course.
We got to always bring them in. We
Yeah.
always have to have Harvard.
Yes, but they looked at it from a different angle, which I thought was pretty interesting, that they actually evaluated the pitches themselves to venture capital, and what they found was that the ideas presented by women were rated higher quality, but the irony is the investors chose to still fund in the male companies and
Right.
ideas way more than the women.
Yeah, and we're gonna hit on that too, why we think that that is. But if we look at it, so if we took what we did is we took all of the studies we could find, and Sarah and I kind of made a list for you of like what the data points to, and that is the capital is used more efficiently. They generate higher revenue per dollar than men. They are building more resilient companies, as we just talked about, stronger customer empathy, insight, and support, grow with fewer resources, take smarter, not reckless risks. Again, we see it in investing as well. And they lead with communication and collaboration, which I think is one of the key factors as we start to talk about the traits. And finally, they're just outperforming financially when they're actually given equal footing as men.
Yeah, that's a good summary of all the things, and, I mean, you hear that, and for the the women listeners out there, it's just, why wouldn't you wanna start a business with all of those things pointing in the right direction?
Then let's go into some of the traits why we identified what we think are, and you have again good insight on this too, having worked with some really successful women entrepreneurs, and you've been obviously successful too. So what's your take?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I would say, and you mentioned a few of these things earlier when you were talking about the people you worked with early on, but, what resonates with me both women I've worked for and myself, knowing myself, is that this whole idea of just women are generally, I can say, better organized, better process oriented, and just you use the word regimented in the right ways. I mean, we're
Mhm.
used to being very busy in our lives. And when it comes to work, we need to apply that as well or take the best of it so that operator mindset, being able to plan and execute, really, to me, I think whether it's a woman in charge of a business or when I've worked in businesses, those always stand out as the strong women leaders seem to single-handedly have that.
Yeah, the multitasking is definitely something that I have noticed, generally speaking. I think also like having some amount of emotional intelligence that, seems to be generally higher than men, and like an ability to kind of work through communication issues, not aggressively, but rather in a cooperative way, is something too that I've noticed that women operators tend to do really well and effectively.
Yeah, and I think with that, to me, what you're talking about there is another key trait I think women generally have is we're just more resilient. Like, we don't give up. I think we have a much more, as you call it, like, whether you're better emotionally or just you can handle problems, the ebbs and flows that come with, as you know, owning your own business, there's highs and lows constantly, and it's a daily thing you're dealing with. I think women can really gotta be more resilient, get through it, manage that, but also they don't give up. Like, I see a lot of men, whether they're starting something or something doesn't work, they just wanna give up or throw in the towel.
Mhm.
versus women, I think, are more prone to want to find the solution, be more resilient. If they know they're on a path, they're going to figure out how to navigate all those different things and get to the win.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think also women tend to, and again see this in investing too, they're taking more calculated bets. Which what's funny though is that men see themselves at being better at it
Sure.
than women. So self-reported, men imagine that they're better at it, but they're actually not. They're actually much more level-headed, much more analytical, and able to work through it and stick with it as you're suggesting. And you see that again, we talked about their survival rate over 10 years is higher than men's too,
Right.
which again indicates that, right?
Yeah, no, and I think the other thing that goes with that too, a little bit of what you're saying and making those calculated bets. I feel like women also excel at really, whether you call it leveraging your networks and relationships, like because
Mhm.
they invest, as you said before, in collaboration and communication, whether they've worked with people 10 years ago or right now or people they met, they're always looking across different parts of their life and organizations, not just trying to be friends with the CEO, but they're friends with all levels and they really nurture those. And then they're able to leverage those later on when they need to have go-to people. And I'll speak for myself. I do that to get specific things done because those people want to work with you because you've helped develop them. You have a relationship with them. I feel like that is a real big advantage that women have, especially when you're talking about starting your own business. And as you said, you need to be lean, you need to be smart about resources and being able to have those people that you can go to and that network to get it done.
Yeah, those are all really good points. So, if everything's so great about women, then why aren't they getting any of the venture capital? They're getting, less than 5% of the money flow goes to women. We should talk about that because, like, what is the problem there?
Yeah, I mean, I think the elephant in the room here, let's just say it because I'm a female and I've been in those seats, is that you're surrounded by a room of white guys and guys that, have worked together forever. They're now making all the decisions, they've run all the companies, they now run all the financial firms, and that's their go tos. And whether they're owing each other favors or they know this person. Like, I think it's just women have always been the minority. And although some of that diversity is changing, as you said, at the end of the day, we're still the minority in the room. And like, people don't know about all these positive traits we just talked about.
Yeah, and that's how I would paint this picture too. So I have done hundreds of millions of dollars in transactions. I have yet to go into a room where a woman is making the decision. Everybody is my skin color. And I think it's a bias. I think that a lot, and also a lot of times it's like they went to Harvard or they went to Duke or they went, you know what I mean? And so they're basically aligning with people that have similar traits as them because that's what people tend to do. They're just biased towards people who look and act like you do and that maybe you even went to school with.
Went to
Let's
school
be
with,
honest.
and I'd also say, like, they're in the rest of your life too. They're on the golf course with you. They're going on trips. They're doing all these things. I mean,
Yeah.
literally, these are your friends, and you trust your friends. And if your friends are your guy group, to your point, that's where you're going to go to. And I think there's that. The other thing I'd throw in, because you hit on it too, is I also believe there's a strong bias towards pedigree, call it,
Yeah.
that you went to the Ivy League. I mean, a lot of these financial firms, whether you're talking even venture all the way to private equity, those guys didn't get those jobs unless they went to Ivy League schools. And so, a lot of women, they want to start businesses. And I'll be the first to say, I don't believe you have to have an Ivy League MBA to be able to start a business or even rise in business. But that pedigree is an issue. I've faced it my whole life and I see it. And that movement isn't changing. That's still how these financial firms are hiring.
We're talking about this and of course the a couple of issues here that will change things and one would be just awareness. That's why we're talking about it. other people are beginning to talk about it as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'd also say if you kind of step back and look at the more macro here, there's definitely a movement, particularly in our country, away from just practical DEI policies and things that companies are doing. So that awareness piece, like from my point of view, is going to take the work of everybody, not only women talking about it, but also the men out there being conscious about hiring women, mentoring women. There are a lot of good organizations particularly looking, for example, even to find women to put on boards. So they are getting that seat at the table. But if you already are in a position with your own company, you'll really think about hiring women even into your company and helping develop them. So I think there's other ways for awareness on top of just how does this movement with some of these financial firms change over time,
Yep.
because I feel like that movement's gonna come as a groundswell from the awareness of everyone out there trying to help make this more a normalized thing.
Now there are funds that we've identified and we're talking about that are actually focusing on female founders.
Yeah, and we researched a few of these and wanted to call them out. There may be more out there too, I'm sure there are. But the handful we found that looked like they're really active and actively investing. The first is the Female Founders Fund, which is a seed stage fund. The Women's VC Fund, they come in, it looks like a bit more on companies that have already started and are ready to scale. Copper Wire Ventures. They are also dedicated to helping women entrepreneurs and that strategic capital, especially in the area of tech driven companies. And then the other one we found was Fearless Fund. They also target businesses that are more diverse and of color, and looking for women there who are trying to start businesses.
Yeah, and there are more. I mean, this is some quick research that we did to identify some, but we do think that this will also be a major change in the environment once we see more capital flowing to women over time, and it will shift the entire industry.
I think too, as much as we're talking about what everybody else is changing and doing, I think like we also should be upfront and say to our audience and all the women out there looking to start businesses, you also kind of need to take the reins yourself too. And we wanted to talk about some other kind of more practical ways of things you can be doing right now to kind of help as this is moving forward, but also help yourself.
Yeah, for both men and women, how they can be supportive of this movement. And why don't we go through that list and talk about it?
Yeah, I think some of those would be you yourself, like make sure you're looking at different ways to get funding and start your business. Reach out, for example, I was talking about networking before and what a strong trait that is for women. Think about your network. Anyone you've ever worked with, come encounter with, even in some of maybe your personal activities or hobbies, is there somebody there that you could go to and ask them to be your mentor or be a guide or just even have coffee with them that you could partner with them, to learn and figure out how do you go about doing this and getting funding and other ways that they may have gone about starting their own businesses. And then another thing Mark and we talk about a lot in our coaching, particularly in the Business Ballers Club, is you'll really take a moment to take a look at your own strengths and weaknesses. We actually have a piece in what we coach around where you go through and evaluate that, your skills, the different things that you're good at, what you need to learn, or maybe find somebody to help complement. Make sure you have a good understanding of that because if you're really grounded there, that's going to help you too in terms of how you move forward and what you need to do to be able to win the funding you need and start your own business.
For sure. We have a list too of just some straightforward things that we think that women and men can do here. So if we go through some of those, one point is just to stop undervaluing your time because women are also statistically underpricing services and they take on more unpaid labor and they're hesitating to make these premium charges. So make sure that your pricing is reflecting your skills and your offering and not your self-doubt.
Yeah. Another one too is that goes with that a bit is that when you are starting up and looking to, let's say, get into a business, think up front about what are some of those ways that you can just make it easier and take that burden off of yourself. Like, are there systems that you can create that leverage those great process and operational skills that you have that are going to make things easier and not as manual, whether it's a tool you can bring on or maybe just a process you do every week or scheduling your time. Like really do that so that you make it easier on yourself as much as work that needs to get done.
Yeah, that makes sense. And how about like with respect to that, are you saying about like really working on that skill, like building that particular skill set
Well, I
to
think
apply?
if it's one that you need to build, but we're inherently saying like women are better at that in general. So lean into it, lean
Yeah.
into that organization and process like type headset that you have and make it work for you, especially when you're looking at all the things you need to get done in your own business.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense. I also think that when you have a particular skill to amplify it, man or woman is also a good thing. Like we both did that to be able to launch our businesses. We talk about asymmetrical bets, and it's kind of one where you're spending some energy on really enhancing a particular skill and then making a business out of it. I mean, that's what I did. I became a great computer programmer, and I was able to leverage that into my first business.
Yeah, absolutely. And then I think going back to, I talked a bit about leveraging your network and looking for mentors. The one caveat we'd say there is you'll be really careful about bringing partners into your business. You want to make sure you're bringing ones that are going to lighten your life, for lack of a better term, versus make it heavier and harder. We talk about that on one of our previous podcasts too, but really make sure you surround yourself when you're thinking about resources with the right people, not too many of them. What do you really need? But make sure those people share the same DNA as you and that they're going to be fun to work with. They're going to be those people, like we said, that are going to get you through thick and thin. And they're always going to be there. They're not going to be the ones that are going to give up or drive you crazy emotionally and things like that.
Yeah, we're Sarah and I are both fans of doing as much as you can on your own and then being super thoughtful about who do you bring into the organization with you or alongside you. It can also be, interestingly too, this can also be family members, friends. Like there are a lot of people that can drag you down when you're starting a business. It doesn't even have to just be the people that you're bringing in the organization. It can be people you associate with too.
Yeah, 100%. And that being said, also, if you feel like you're in a position where you don't have those people, and you don't have your network yet, it's like it's never too late to start. Start today. People that you know, build that network around you as you're starting your business, the different people you look to, whether it's even vendors or other people you need or to do business with, start putting them into your network and building it now. Because even if you don't need those people in your business today, always start thinking about building the future you. I can't say that enough. The future you and your future business, and who might you need even 6 months or a year or down the road from now. Build that network now and use those skills that we talked about being a great relationship builder and communicator to get that going so you have it growing while you are building your business.
Yeah, that's a really good point. You can simultaneously work on your network and operate and start growing your business. It's true. You don't have to wait. And I think it's also a good idea when you have a particular set of skills, you can also build around communities that are share those similar things. So conferences of coders and business people so that it's a little bit surgical and thoughtful about where you'll network.
Yeah. And I think another big thing that I want to call out here too, because it's something I have to constantly catch myself on and other female founders I've worked with too, which is, make moves when you have clarity, not perfection. Be confident. Like, that's the one thing, like, I think as good as women are at all the traits we said, we also can tend to want perfection and things to be really good. And when you're starting a business, things aren't going to be perfect and you're not going to have everything figured out. You need to know, just like, again, going back to a lot of the things Mark and I coach, like, what problem are you solving? Do you have the idea? Do you have the budget? Do you have that basic plan that's going to take you from A to Z to move you forward? And get moving. Like, you don't have to have every piece figured out. You're going to figure it out along the way. And then you're going to use those skills to be able to pivot and know where you need to make changes. But don't wait. Don't wait for perfection. Time's going to pass you by. Move forward with confidence and feel confident.
It's like confidence grows from action. So
Yes.
when you start doing things, you're gonna feel more and more confident and things will start rolling your way.
And then when you do that too, make sure you're also always protecting your own energy. Again, I'd say this for yourself and self care. Just like Marze, if you're bringing people in that are like dragging you down, like boot them immediately. If you're working on tasks that are just, they don't make sense and are dragging you down, make sure you get rid of that right away. You need to make sure that you have that energy because this is going to be a road that you're going to want to be able to follow and build and feel great every single day. So make sure you're always keeping that in mind also.
Yeah, that's another real you're kind of on a roll here, Sarah.
I
I
am, you can tell I'm passionate
yeah,
about this.
yeah,
I've
well, look,
seen these
you're
shoes,
living it, right? You've
hold up,
lived it.
lived it. Question I have for you though, Mark, on this too, because I'm interested in your perspective. We talk a lot about when you're starting a business that you want to try to bootstrap, do it on your own, be as lean as possible. But with everything we've been talking about, how there is such a low percentage of people investing in female founded businesses. If you were starting a business as a woman, would you think about that differently? Like maybe like go look for capital sooner just to build the awareness and get on people's radars and maybe adjust some of that a bit or no?
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's probably good to get out in front of it a little bit faster. And you could do that in a number of ways, but you could basically you're trying to start searching for capital before you're actually going to need it. I mean, that tends to be the right strategy anyway, but even doing it a little bit sooner, trying to make those connections and yeah, and get out in front of it a little bit, build your deck earlier, get your story ready earlier and start looking for the money before you actually need it. I think it's is good advice. It's a good point.
Yeah, and like you have a ton of experience raising capital too and like being pitched with ideas. How do you recommend like where should women start? I know we gave some examples of funds, but like what should people actually do?
So first is the bootstrapping, and that's kind of that early money that you're bringing in, and that kind of that early mentality. So I think that that element's the same. It's and women will be good at it. And I think but when you're looking for the professional money, that's when you're going to need to get this jump start because there are just you're likely to hit more no's just because of what we talked about. So definitely I would identify funds that either are investing specifically in women like we've identified or that have women in leadership too. I would prioritize things that way. You're looking at first for funds that are focused on women entrepreneurs, then places that might have women who are responsible for the investing dollars, and then go down from there. Now, look, if you're in a particular industry where people are hearing pitches and it's like a particular, that might change a little bit. But the point being is I would do it early and get out there a little bit earlier because you're likely to see more no's.
And then, like, what do you do? Do you I mean, once everything you just said, do you just reach out to them, or do you need to find somebody in there, or how do you actually make the connection?
They're expecting to receive decks, right? They're expecting it's always better if you know somebody who knows someone at that particular organization. You're gonna
Yeah,
have,
makes
you're
sense.
gonna be luckier, if you will, that way. They are going to tell you ways that you can get your ideas in front of them. And so that will be known. You can also reach out to people on LinkedIn. Again, though, it's better don't do it so early that you don't have anything. When you don't have anything but an idea, investors are skeptical, right? Because their ideas are cheap, but execution is not. So I would wait to, at least to the point where you have something demonstrable, then, then go and start pitching.
Okay. No, that's really helpful.
And then what about the guys who are listening right now?
Yeah, let's talk about that.
We should like give them some tips too. And we tried to make some practical advice for men that might have a woman entrepreneur in their life. So you want me to hit a
Yeah,
couple
I
of
would
those or
let's say this is more broad. This could be the guys because we don't leave out the guys, but let's say any partner of a woman or or working with a woman or anything like that. Like it could even be advice for other women working with women, I guess is what I'm saying. So
okay,
this
fair
is
fair
that broad versus about the person starting the business himself.
okay, fair enough. So the first one that we had, and this is I think guys just generally do this in relationships. They're always trying to fix everything. And sometimes, someone just wants to use you as a sounding board and you don't need to fix all of the problems and solve all of the issues. Somebody just wants to bounce these ideas off of you or bounce a problem off of you and just to, be able to vocalize it. So that's something men could just use in general. I would say that women are oftentimes just looking for, an ear to listen to their issues rather than solve their problems.
Do you have others?
I do. We had share the load. So if your partner is an entrepreneur, for you to be doing some of these household tasks, make your own doctor's appointment. It's like your basic things where you're trying to remove some friction from your partner's life so that she can also focus on her business too. And like I don't see this as really helping. This is more like, hey, you're in a partnership and to that extent, it's being a good partner in the relationship helps your significant other to build her strengths and her business as well.
Yeah, I mean, building on that a bit, I would say what in order to do that, the partner also needs to put their ego aside. I think it's really easy to say that even though you don't want to be competitive, you're going to be competitive. And particularly if it's a guy and kind of wanting to be the breadwinner or the most competitive in the relationship, you've got to like let that go and leave some space for your partner to actually succeed. And if they're more successful than you, then great, but have that mindset, successful or not, and not look at it as a competition. Like give that space and be consciously doing that and supportive.
Yeah, which kind of leads to another point here, which is if you are in a situation where you have a network that's extensive, tapping into that to help your wife or girlfriend or partner, that can make a lot of sense because you going out there and pitching it, if you will, can be really beneficial for her. And it's not trying to overshadow it like it's your idea, but simply that you're trying to help and rally some of the troops that you might have access to and make fundraising or other types of relationships easier for the business.
Yeah, that's a really good one. What can you do to help amplify what your partner's trying to do and make it bigger and help facilitate some of those paths to get to the right people? I like that one a lot. And then going back to what we were talking about with women just being really good about managing their time and being organized.
Yep.
I think looking at that one from the partner's perspective, the partner needs to respect those boundaries. Let's say if she has her day planned out to do certain things, and maybe there's a part of that day just to go get a mental break to go for a run or something like that, make sure that she's able to follow that, regiment that she set it in that schedule and don't try to minimize disruption. Obviously, things are gonna happen, it's life and things happen day to day, but really support her boundaries so that she can be successful that way too.
That's fair. That's fair.
Say the other is, make sure as a partner too that you are supportive in like the little ways and just practicing gratitude for your partner and even praising what they're doing.
Hmm.
But I say it and do it in an authentic way. Don't just, be doing it like you have a checklist to say good job 10 times a day or send flowers every day of the week. Like, do it in a meaningful and authentic way so your partner knows that you really mean it. I feel like that kind of praise coming from their number one supporter can't be underestimated in all this of how important that really is.
So true. And it doesn't always have to be like some extraordinary outcome. Like if you get your website launched, let's say, as an example, you might not have been a dime of revenue yet, but that's a milestone. And so you can celebrate the milestones of the business.
Absolutely.
These are definitely some of the ways that a partner can be supportive, and I think we've given some methods also for, if you will, for women to help themselves in the journey. And I mean, why don't we talk a little bit about how business ballers can be of assistance as well?
Business ballers, Mark and I focus on coaching new entrepreneurs and entrepreneurs who already have their own businesses. We have a set curriculum that goes over several different modules. And then with that, we also provide live group coaching as well as individual coaching so that you really get that hands on, customized approach for what you need for your unique situation and what you're doing to build your business. And the whole program is hosted online. You meet with us on Zoom, the course curriculum on Zoom as well, and through videos so that you're able to have a really robust program starting wherever you are. If you are at the beginning where you're just coming up with an idea, we will help you do that and vet it. If you need those tools on even what to do to how to set up your business, how to do the marketing, e-commerce, if you're online, all the way through a lot of the things Mark was talking about with raising capital and how to do that, how to build a great pitch, what you need to do to be able to fund and grow your business. And then along with it, we spoke a lot about being able to evaluate your skills and where you need to complement them. We've really tried to fill in on all the pieces. So if you're feeling a bit short, let's say on financials and financial statements, we have a whole piece there that will teach you just the basics of what you need to know so you don't need to feel like you have to be a full on CFO. And we even give you literally all the different playbooks, all the templates and tools that Mark and I have used over our 70 years of combined experience and all the companies we've started, the best of the best, so you can leverage those right away and talk about systems. You have one to put in place from day one.
Yeah, we don't work with thousands of entrepreneurs. Instead, it's a very focused approach where Sarah and I want to understand you and your business and where you want to go so that we can really help you. And I think also additionally, not only do we have these tools, but you're tapping into our network and to our skill set as well to really coach you up and get you from the point of either starting and or scaling your business so that you can live the dream life that you want. And that's what we're focused on. We're focused on your positive outcomes.
Absolutely. So if this sounds like something that you're interested to start or you're starting your business already, go check out businessballers.com. We have all the information there, make it really easy for you to connect with us and sign up, and we'll get you on your way.